Jazakallah khair. I was hoping that I'd get away with just talking about atheism because Harun was going to say I'm going to run out of time, but he's extended my suffering, shall we say. After the two great speakers have put a lot of pressure on me now to do it up to their level, subhanAllah, it's going to be very difficult to match their level. Because, alhamdulillah, they had all the nice topics, because, you know, doing dawah, I love to do the importance of dawah and debating with Christians. But whenever you do dawah in town, the most difficult people to do dawah is often the atheists. Because the atheists will come from all different angles and will try to give you this angle and this angle. But before we go into the subject of atheism, I'd like to give a couple of precursory points about doing dawah. Because, subhanAllah, this is a dawah training course. And many people are under the impression that you must know everything about Christianity. You must know everything about atheism. You must know everything about agnostics before you can go and give dawah. This is one extreme. And there is the other extreme, where people don't know anything. Like Brother Shajjad said, they don't know anything about Islam. They don't even know what Allah is. And they don't go out and give dawah. So we have two extremes. One extreme, have no knowledge and go and give dawah. And another extreme, they think they have to learn everything before they can give dawah. Both of these are wrong. As always in Islam, the best path is the middle path. The best path is the middle path. When you have some knowledge, go and give dawah. Do you think Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu knew everything about atheism? Do you think so? Do you think he knew everything about Christianity? No. So why do Muslims put excuses that we can't give dawah? I don't know much about Christianity. I don't know much about atheism. They put excuses that they can't give dawah. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was one of the best da'is. He had not much knowledge as many of you have about Christianity or even atheism, yet he went and gave dawah. So this is the precursor message I give, that we have to give dawah with what knowledge we have. We don't wait until we gain this knowledge and that knowledge before we go and give dawah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to question you about the knowledge you have, and did you go and portray that? And every Muslim in this room has said the shahada. We have that knowledge. And this is the message that we should go and give out. And inshallah we'll see how this shahada comes about. So firstly, we'll start off with some definitions. And subhanAllah, when I start looking into this, it's quite amazing when we look at the definitions and how certain words come from. The first point I want to make, when atheists come to you and debate with you, the first thing they say, religion is the cause of all evil. Religion is the cause of all war. Religion is the cause of killing and everything. That's the first thing they often say to you. And what you have to ask yourself is, and they will claim that they are not religious. They don't have a religion. And this is a misconception. The premise you agree on first is that yes, you do have a religion. You as an atheist have a religion. Because religion in definition by meaning is something that you believe in, or some set of values that you hold to. So anyone who has some certain kind of belief has a religion. So the person who believes in the monkey, he has a religion. The person who believes in the elephant has a religion. The person who believes there's no God has a religion. There are all different types of religion, but they have religion. So you break it down to the atheist that everyone has a religion. Even you, the atheist, you have a religion. It's not the same as my religion, but you still have a religion. And then I looked at the word atheism. What does it mean? Okay? And it's like, you know, in Arabic, we have the word Islam. It comes from the word salama. You know, subhanAllah, I was like, oh, am I studying Arabic here? It's funny to see it in English. But obviously it's not English, it's probably from Greek or Latin or something like that. The word atheism, theism, means to worship God, or to confirm that God exists. And whenever you put an A in front of it, it means the opposite. Okay? So it means no or without. So when you say someone is theistic, not atheistic, theistic means someone who believes in God. But when you say someone is atheistic, it's negating that fact. So this is where atheism comes from. It comes from someone who does not believe in God. Okay? And then we have two types of atheism. You know, subhanAllah, they try to blame the Muslims in these categories. The atheists, we have something called weak atheism, and we have something called strong atheism. And I'll go into this in a bit later, okay? A weak atheist is those who do not believe in or credit the existence of one or more gods. And a strong atheist is those who assert the contrary position, that God does not exist. So the weak one is, I don't really believe in a God. He doesn't care. But the strong atheist is, he says, definitely there is no God. So you see the subtle difference. One proves that there is no God, and the other one doesn't believe in a God. So there is a subtle difference between the two. And you will see how in society today which belief that most people carry. And before I go on, atheism is a minority. You know, in the world today, most people have a belief into worship something superior, because this is our natural inclination as human beings. As human beings, we have the fitrah to worship something. Throughout history, you see mankind worshipping the sun, the moon, the river Nile, things which are more superior. The aspect of worshipping nothing more superior is a minority position. So we need to bear that in mind, that atheists are a minority. And like any subject, we need to look at the historical context of how this subject comes about. So when we look at atheism, we need to look at where in history did it come about, okay? Obviously this is a Dawah training course, I'm giving you a lot of facts. The reason I'm giving this fact is that we need to know the subject, so when an atheist comes to us, we can understand their background. We can discuss with them how they are thinking, okay? So the first thing is, it can be dated back to as early 6th century BC, but in terms of its modern day understanding, it's really from the 18th century. And the word atheism itself wasn't coined until the 16th century. So if you look at in terms of time, it's not that old. Christianity, 2,000 years old. Judaism, thousands of years old. Atheism, in its modern day context, is only 400 years old. Okay? And there is a reason for atheism. There's a reason why atheism came about. Firstly, if you look in the Muslim world, it didn't really exist. Atheism is a European phenomenon. I can't say that word. Phenomenon, okay? It's a European phenomenon. And the reason this is because in Europe, in what they call as the period of enlightenment, there was a battle between the church and the state, okay? This idea of secularism. And in this battle between the state and the church, the atheists came with their arguments and they grew in their number. So we need to look at the historical aspect where they came from. And today, we have something called militant atheism. You know, subhanAllah, they call Muslims militant. These atheists are militant in their battle against Muslims especially. Two people especially, Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens. Richard Dawkins has written a book called The Deluded God. Okay? This, is full of rubbish basically. And the second one, you know how we say Allahu Akbar, Allah is great. Christopher Hitchens has written a book called God is Not Great. Okay? So these are militant atheists who are basically in an ideological war against those people who believe in Allah, and they're out there to basically give these arguments. But subhanAllah, these arguments are easy to dispel. So when we're doing da'wah to an atheist, what do we do? Okay? And Zakir Naik, he puts it quite nicely, and I got this from Zakir Naik. He said that when you do da'wah to an atheist, the atheist has half of your da'wah already done. Okay? He believes in half of the shahada. So half of your job is already done, okay? Because what is the half of our shahada? The first half of our shahada is, there is no God, okay? There is none worthy of worship. This is what atheists came to believe. They claim to believe that there is no God. So you go up to an atheist and say, the Christians, it's hard doing now to a Christian, but you're 50% there. All I've got to do is work on the other 50%. So half of the job is done with an atheist. Because he says there is no God. And we as Muslims, we believe the first half of our shahada is there is no God. So you say to the atheist, I just need to work on the rest of the 50%. And obviously the rest of the 50% is accept Allah. And obviously that is much harder to explain that 50% than the first 50%. So you need to reason with the atheist. And one of the problems that atheists deny God, because that's what the first part is saying, there is no God, is because they don't understand the concept of God. Or their definition of God has come from their surroundings. Because remember where atheism came about from, mainly as we understand today, is from this conflict in the Europe between the church and the state. So most of atheists' idea of who God is from which religion? Christianity and Judaism. Because these are the two prominent religions of Europe, okay? So the atheist concept of God is from Christianity and Judaism. And just like how the brother previously mentioned, the concept of God in Christianity is flawed. Because what do? They make Jesus God. And Jesus is a created man. And when you make something that's created God, you're going to have problems. You're going to have problems trying to understand the concept of God. So that's why atheists often deny God. Because their understanding of God is from incorrect basis. So why do atheists deny God? Okay? These are some of the reasons. And remember, this topic is so huge, we can't go through all the arguments and can't go through all the reasons. So I'm just picking some of the issues, okay? The reasons atheists will deny God is, first of all, they don't understand the definition of God. Because they don't understand the definition of God, they'll deny God, okay? The second point they'll come is that you can't believe something you can't see, okay? Atheists will say, how can you believe something that you cannot see? So they believe in this concept of you have to feel it, you have to touch it, you have to see it in front of you, then you can believe it. And inshallah we'll go through these arguments, the rebuttal against each of these arguments. Another aspect that atheists bring in is the theory of evolution, okay? This has been proved, they say, by science. Science proves evolution, therefore there's no God. Because the theory of evolution goes against the idea that there is a God. Okay? So therefore God does not exist. This is an argument they bring forth. Okay? Another one that they bring forth is look at the calamities in the world. Look at Somalia. People are dying. Look at Iraq. There's war. Look at Afghanistan. There's war. If there was a God, all of these things won't happen. So because of all of this is happening, and all of this suffering is happening, therefore there's no God. So these are the main arguments, and obviously they bring other arguments as well, but due to the time constraints, we'll go through these arguments, okay? And the first one and the last one are linked. And it's because their misunderstanding of who God is, they will come out with these arguments. So the question that you question to an atheist, so when you do endow to an atheist, you'll question him. Say, if I have an object, and show it to an atheist or anyone, even a Muslim or a non-Muslim or anyone, and you ask the question to the atheist, who is the person who will be able to provide details of the mechanisms of this unknown object? Because if I tell you, how do I use this phone? Most people will know. Because most people of you have got a phone. You'll all know how to use a phone. If you don't know, you'll say, well, did you get a manual with the phone? So yeah, I've got a manual. So we bring out the manual and start reading it. But if I got some object which nobody had seen before and put it up and says, how do you use this? And you've never seen it, the question and the answer you will give is whoever created that object will give you the manual to how to use it. Okay? This is basic common sense. Or they'll say the producer, whoever produced that object will give you the manual. Or they will say the manufacturer. Think of these terms, because this is the basis when you discuss with someone. You don't go straight into the concept as, therefore God exists. You don't want to go jump in straight away. Take them to a journey. Take them for a journey where you're speaking rationally, giving them rational arguments. Because if you don't agree on rational arguments, before you go into any discussion, you need to have some kind of premise. It's no point, as Ibrahim said, there's no point wasting time discussing with the evangelist. Because an evangelist, if he says he's been revealed with God, why does he need you? Why does he need the Quran? Similarly, there's no point discussing with a madman. Imagine you're discussing with a madman, trying to convince him rationally that God exists. What's the point? He doesn't have the capability of ration. Similarly, when we discuss with someone, you need to have a basis that we are going to agree on rational principles. If he doesn't agree on rational principles, then there's no point discussing. If outside is light, and the person says, no, it's dark, what kind of rational discussion are you going to have with this person? You have to agree on rational principles. And from this basis, then you can discuss with an atheist. So one of the arguments that we as Muslims will always use is this argument of cause and effect, okay? The rational argument. that something cannot be created from nothing. Okay? This is what human beings have been programmed with. We as human beings in our intellect have been programmed with that something cannot come from nothing. This is in our biology, it's intrinsic in us. We can't understand anything outside that premise. It's like, I work in IT, yeah? And when you talk about a computer language has to have certain basic principles. You can't just write anything in a computer language. It has certain code, and you have to follow that code when you want to write a program. If you don't follow that code, the program doesn't work. Similarly, our human beings, Allah has put in ourselves, in our minds, that we have this idea that we can't believe that something just appears from nowhere. And we say that if you go to a beach and you look at the ripples on the beach, you know that these ripples have been created by the waves. Because the waves have come onto the beach and then they've gone back. And as a cause of the wave coming onto the beach and going back has caused these ripples on the sand. Now if tomorrow you go to the beach, the same beach, and it says on that beach, written down, Nottingham Islam Information Point, carved on the sand, what would you say? Someone had written it. You wouldn't say that the water from the beach came and kind of like formed itself into something and written down Nottingham Islam Information Point. You would never say that. Because in your mind you know that something can come from nothing, and something of intelligence can't come from just pure chance. Because the first bit you can say, okay, the water came, it rubbed against the sand, and it caused some ripple effect. There's not much intelligence required in that. But to next day when you come and see Nottingham Islam Information Point, this is intelligence. Because now, first of all, you can read that. You need some intelligence to read that. And secondly, it's more of a hard thing than just the ripple effect that you see when the beach is with the water. So you see, this addition thing has got intelligence in it. So you have to question, how did that come about? So the concept of God, okay? If you are denying God like the atheists do, you have to understand what the definition of God is first, okay? And you have to come to some agreement on the premise of what you define, okay? Now if someone holds up a book and claims it's a pen, what would you say to that person? I'm holding this phone and say this is a pen. You're going to say that's not a pen. And the reason you're going to say that's not a pen is because you know what a phone is. Now if someone says there is no God but Allah, and someone says no, there is no God, but they don't understand what God is, how can they deny God? If you don't understand God, you can't deny Him. And going back to the historical aspects, atheist knowledge of God comes from Christianity, comes from Judaism. So they don't really understand who God is. Okay? And that's why they often reject God, because their understanding of God are the false gods, or the false idea of God by man, God that has been created by man. Remember, most atheists haven't had exposure to Islam. So who is Allah? Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we believe, is the creator of all things. Okay? We need to define who God is. We need to have a definition of God. Because unless you define God, you can't deny Him. Okay? Unless you understand God, you can't deny Him. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this concept of God, people say, okay, we say God is the creator. He is the creator of everything. So the common argument is who created God, isn't it? So you say, okay, another God created him. They say, well, who created that God? So this concept of created, what does it lead to?
Nothing.
It leads to an infinite kind of argument of who created who. It doesn't exist, it can't exist, we can't comprehend it. Because we know that something has to create something. So the creator can't be part of this understanding. The creator has to be something separate from this understanding. Okay? Because everything in life we know has a beginning and an end. Just like all of us in this room, we were born and then we're going to have what happen? We're going to die. Okay? Like the phone here is being used one day and one day it will be gone. Like everything in this world is created, it exists and it will go. Okay? So if you put the creator in this argument, he's not the creator. So this is the mistake of the atheists, because their understanding of God was like Jesus, a man. or the understanding of God for someone who does not have the power of everything, they couldn't comprehend God. So we have to understand God is not part of His creation. He's separate from the creation. Because as soon as you put God part of the creation, what do? You limit Him. You limit God. Because if God is part of the creation, then He's limited. He has to be separate from the creation. And another concept of this concept of infinity, okay? Because what do atheists often say? We can't believe in God. God doesn't exist because we can't see Him, we can't comprehend Him. But you ask an atheist, do you believe in infinity? They'll say yes. If you ask an atheist, do you believe in infinity? They'll say yes. But can you put infinity into reality? Can you feel infinity?
No.
Can you put it in front of you? No. Can you quantify infinity? Let me give you some maths, okay? Who's good at maths? 1 and 1. 20 and 20.
1%.
100 and 100. 200. 100 and infinity. 1000 minus infinity. 1 million minus infinity. Always infinity. This is a simple mathematical equation that when you add or take something from infinity, will always give you infinity. So they believe it's a mathematical concept. But now to ask to an atheist, okay, I can add 1 iPhone and add 2 iPhones and I get 3 iPhones. I can show you that. Now add me 1 infinity and 2. Can you put that together? You can't. Because infinity you can't quantify. You can't quantify infinity. Yet they're willing to believe in infinity. They'll say, I believe in infinity. But they don't believe in the Creator. They don't believe in the Creator who is infinite. Okay? So you need to understand these certain ideas. Understand the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is infinite. He has no end. He has no beginning. And He is the creator of everything. So another argument that they bring forth is that you can't believe in something that you can't see. Okay? Now, we need to learn these arguments. Okay? Can we all see gravity? But ask the atheist, do you believe in gravity? You say yes. And why will he say that? So it's been proven. We can't see it. The only reason we believe in gravity is because there are signs to indicate that there's a force that pulls everything down. And you can do scientific experiments to work out what that speed is. Okay? You know, you take something, you let it go, it drops, and because of this you equate that to gravity. You call it gravity. There's nothing to say that this is gravity. We gave it a name. Mankind gave it a name called gravity. But we can't see gravity. No one can see gravity. But we still believe gravity exists. Okay? Someone knocks on that door when the door is shut. Can we see through that door? No? But because there's a knock, we know there's someone behind it. Do we know who it is? Do you know what colour they are? Do you know anything about them? No, but we know there's someone out there, okay? So these are signs. Just because you can't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. This example apparently is from, I heard it from Palestine actually. I think it was in Jerusalem. One of the, Israel. The teachers was teaching the Palestinian kids that there's no God. Because God doesn't exist, we can't see Him, therefore the God doesn't exist. Now this very intelligent Palestinian boy, he said to the teacher, do you have a brain? And she said, of course I've got a brain, but I can't see your brain. So therefore you don't have a brain. So just because you can't see your brain, doesn't mean you don't have a brain. Of course you have a brain. The question is we look at the signs. Just because I can't see your brain doesn't mean you don't have a brain. Okay? There are other aspects that we believe in. Ask the atheist, do you believe in love? Yes, I believe in love. Okay, they'll say I believe in love. But can I see love? No. Love is a feeling. We know love exists, but we can't see it. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean love doesn't exist. Love exists. We all experience love. Whether it's love for your wife, love for your parents, love for animals, whatever it is, we experience love. But we can't see it. We can't see anger either. Okay? But we know it exists. Okay? We can't see the oxygen that we breathe, but we know it exists. Okay? Because we breathe. So just because you can't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Okay? So that's the first argument, just flawed. Because you can't see something, it doesn't exist. We look for the signs. What are the signs of the Creator? We'll look at, inshallah, we'll go into some of this in a bit. Another concept of evolution, Darwinism, okay? I call him the prophet of modern atheism. You know, subhanAllah, they don't say they don't have a religion. They do have a religion. Their religion, their prophet is Charles Darwin. You know, subhanAllah, our prophets are the true prophets. Their prophets are the false prophets. Their prophet is Charles Darwin. Because you talk to someone about evolution, Darwin says this, Darwin says that, as he got divine revelation or something. You know how we say Muhammad said this, Jesus said this, the atheists will say Darwin said this, and they'll have other prophets that they have, like Karl Marx and all Stalin and all these people. These are their prophets. They say they don't have atheism kind of is linked to this idea called communism, and they say that there's no religion. But if you look at them, they always refer to certain people as prophets and people that are reference point. So for the atheist, their prophet is Darwinism. And what does he believe? He has this basic belief that everything is a result of evolution. That all of us around here, we all originated from some small speck somewhere millions of years ago, and this evolved into something else, and this evolved into something else, and after all of these thousands of years, we as intelligent human beings are sitting here as a process of evolution. And this concept of natural selection, survival of the fittest, this is the belief of Darwinism, okay? So inshallah we'll look at this belief and how we can combat it. I'm going to give you a little example. As I said, there's so many arguments you can give to combat atheism, okay? And this is one of the doctors I saw in one of the programs, I think the Dean show. And he gave this example. He says, the human being, has 50 trillion cells in the human body. Approximately, I'm not saying exactly, I didn't go and count them. I'm sure the doctor didn't either. So approximately 50 trillion cells in the human body. And each cell, within it, contains the instructions of what it needs to do within the nucleus, okay? Those who do biology, the cell consists of a nucleus and a membrane and some protons and neutrons and all these kind of things. I forgot because I did it like 25 years ago. But generally, the cell has a nucleus, I do remember that. And in the nucleus, it's like the brain. It's got all the instructions, the program of what to do, okay? And this doctor says, if we were to write the instructions in this cell, we'll end up writing 900 books, with each book 500 pages long. Can you imagine that? From one cell, okay? 900 books, and each book is 500 pages long, okay? Now, when you talk to an atheist, like for instance, I've got programmers that work for me, and we write these programs. And when the people come and ask, look, can you write a program to do this? And we do this, and I say, wow, that's so intelligent. That is so good that I can type someone's name, and it gives me their detail, and blah, 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 blah. That's really clever programming. You know how long that programming is? If you take the code of that program written in C# or whatever language it is, it's probably about 4 pages, 5 pages, 6 pages, 7 pages. Believe me, it's not a book of 500 pages. The most complicated piece of software, most of you know Windows, Microsoft Windows, is a piece of software. Take the code for that, probably a few hundred pages max. Not even that, okay? And people are wild and they're saying, wow, look at this piece of software, it's so amazing. Yet one cell, the code in that cell is 900 books, 500 pages, and we don't even stop to think, where did this come from? You know, if they come to tell you that Microsoft Windows just came out of air and it was just on your computer out of nowhere, stop talking rubbish. You know, some programmers programmed it, we've had a programmer who's done it. You're going to say that. You're going to say that man is crazy. But yet, when the cell is like this with this kind of instruction, we don't even stop to think that where this come from. This is how silly the atheist is. This is how far away they've gone away from rationality. And we take the incident of random chance, okay? Take a blank piece of paper, okay? And throw some ink on that paper, okay? Do you think, by just me throwing that ink on that random piece of on the blank piece of paper, we'll be able to write the code for that nucleus? Do you think it'll come out? Never. Because you know that this is so complicated in its specific instructions. Imagine now that piece of paper there, it's got some, I think it's the etiquette of the mosque, in Arabic, I'm assuming, of like what you should do, what you should not do in the mosque. Is that right? No? Oh, it's the dua after salah. Okay, maybe it's dua after salah. Sorry, can't read Arabic. I don't understand Arabic. But imagine now that was blank, and I just threw some ink on that, and I expected that to come out. What would you say about me? I need to go to Macklin Hospital, yeah? Okay? Because I'm mad. Yeah?
Probably said that you died in around.
I'm dynamite. But this is what the atheists think. They think random chance, with all these molecules, we came from nowhere, and the complicated cell like this, that's how it appeared. Whereas something like that, notice what is so simple, they'll never believe it. They'll never believe it. So this is the ludicrous beliefs of the atheists. Okay? And this Shaykh, he goes on, because I'm limited by time, he goes on about the cell. Because just giving an example of how complicated the cell is. The cell has a membrane, yeah? And he gives this example that if I want to go to Hajj tomorrow, yeah? Many people want to go Hajj, they have to get the travel documents. You go to the border, they check all these travel documents, they stamp it and all that, and have all this border control. And within each of the countries in the world, we have these beautiful cities like London, Paris, Mecca, Medina, all these cities, and within each cities, we've got all these systems going around. But when you look at the cell has this thing called the membrane, and the membrane acts like the border control. It controls what comes into the cell, what goes out of the cell, with special chemicals. And within that, you've got this thing called mitochondria. I probably spelled it wrong. This is like a biology lesson, yeah? But within that, and the mitochondria, it supplies the energy to the cell, okay? And within that, you've got lysozymes, yeah? And they clean out all the rubbish. So imagine a city. This Sheikh, he basically said, do the analogy of a cell to a city. Just like here, every Thursday, the bins are collected, okay? I switch on the power and the light comes on, comes from the power station near Ratcliffe, yeah? That's the one that's creating the power. We have this city, has all of these systems behind it. Just like the cell, it has all of these systems behind it. How can the cell come from nothing? How can the cell just come out from pure chance? And not only that, this cell replicates itself exactly the same, it duplicates itself. Imagine London replicating exactly itself like that into 4 or 5 different places. It can't happen. So many differences. It won't work. But the cells, the replicates, they keep on replicating and replicating and replicating. All of this by chance doesn't make sense. So what is the missing link? Now, there's a big quote here from an evolutionist. He says, the major problem in proving the theory of evolution has been the fossil record. Because when you have a theory, you have to prove it with some facts, because that's the scientific way of doing things, that's what they believe in. And what they say is, when you look at the fossil records, the imprints of vanished species preserved in the Earth's geological formations, this record has never revealed traces of Darwin's hypothetical intermediate variance. Because what is Darwin's theory is that we came from monkeys to human beings, yeah? And the intermediate stages, the fossils, we can't find them anywhere. Because if we evolve, there must be something in the between. We can't find them anywhere. So he goes on and says, instead species appear and disappear abruptly, and this anomaly has fueled the creationist argument that each species was created by God. So even the evolutionists have got doubt in their theory. They're kind of like thinking, this doesn't add up, this doesn't make sense, okay? And Darwin himself, in his own book, The Origin of Species, in the chapter, Difficulty of the Theory, so he writes a theory what all these people believe in it. Can you imagine now the Prophet Muhammad, he teaches about Islam, teaches about God, and then we have hadith which says, I'm not really sure if I'm the Prophet, I'm not really sure that God exists, what would we say to that? Crazy. We say crazy. Darwin writes a book about evolution, he says that evolution is the truth, yet within it he's got a chapter, Difficulty of the Theory. Meaning that there are some aspects of this theory doesn't make sense, doesn't add up. This is the prophet of atheism, following the false prophets. Believe me, that all the other religions that follow the false prophets, the atheists are also following the false prophets. Okay? And he says these difficulties primarily consist of fossil record, complex organs of living things that could not possibly explain by the coincidence, by the eye, and by the instincts of living things. He's even saying his doubts in his own belief. This is the prophet of atheism. Okay? And again, other physicists, they basically comment on this chapter, reading The Origin of Species, and he says, I found that Darwin was much less sure of himself than he is often represented to be. The chapter shows considerable self-doubt. Okay? So basically doubting himself. And another thing about Darwin and his errors, I bet you many of you didn't know that he was an arch racist. Okay? Look at what he said in a book called The Descent of Man. He boldly commented on the greater differences between men of distinct races. Darwin held blacks and Australian Aborigines to be equal to gorillas, and then inferred that these would be done away with by the civilized races in time. This was his belief. SubhanAllah. Well, if that is his belief, is wrong, because alhamdulillah, look in this room. Many people of different colours. They're not going to be extinct. Do you think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to, Bilal is going to be extinct? Bilal is going to be in Jannah, inshallah.
I say that they've done studies found that Caucasians actually are on the decline. Actually, the planet will eventually be a coloured planet.
The brother made a comment for the sisters that the Caucasians, the blue-eyed and the blonde-haired, are actually on the decline, and the increases of the coloured people, whether they're black or brown or whatever. So, subhanAllah, these people, and this is the prophet of atheism, a racist. You need to know these facts so we can expose these people. We can expose their fallacies. We can expose their beliefs that they're taught rubbish most of the time. Another myth is the science myth, because evolutionists will tell you that if you believe in science, then you can't believe in God. Again, this misunderstanding comes from the conflict of church, the conflict of state and religion. Because in Christianity, science has a problem. In Christianity, science can't be answered, and that's why most atheists will tar all religions with the same brush, okay? And this is a famous philosopher, Francis Bacon. He says that a little knowledge of science makes a man an atheist, but an in-depth study of science makes him a believer in God. SubhanAllah. This is a kuffar, a very good statement. A little knowledge in science makes you an atheist, but an in-depth knowledge, what I talked about the cells, how is that knowledge do you think being driven? By strong scientific research, yeah? Strong scientific research is giving you that knowledge. And when you get that knowledge, it will surely point you to a creator. The more you learn about science, the more you learn about the universe, the more you learn about the human body, the more you learn about the atmosphere, will point you to the direction that there is a creator. And that's what he's saying. Those people who are ignorant of science, who have little knowledge of science, will make you an atheist. But those who have in-depth study of science, it will push them to be a believer. And the Quran obviously, contains 6,000 ayats, okay? 6,000 ayats which are proofs for mankind, because the Quran itself is a proof, but that's an argument for another day. But in it, over 1,000 verses in the Quran speak about science, okay? So to say that science and Islam don't mix is a myth as well, because science and Islam, when they were put together, actually flourished. If you look at the golden age of Islam and Muslims, science flourished under Islam. It's not the other way around, when Christianity, science and Christianity struggled to coexist together. Sorry.
It's just Stephen Hawking. He knows so much about science. What can we say about this guy?
One of the argument I say about that is the point that Shajad made, yeah? SubhanAllah, do you think that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best of da'is, should not be able to convince his uncle, Abu Talib? Do you think he should not be able to convince his uncle? We believe one of the flaws that I think da'is have is that when they understand something, they believe they can convince anybody. I know the arguments against atheism, I'm going to go to that atheist and I'm going to discuss with him and I'm going to get him to take the shahada tomorrow. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. No matter how much you know, no matter how much you convince that atheist, where is the guidance from? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? Do you think that no one could do better than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? No one could do that. Yet he did not manage to convince Abu Talib. Abu Talib, the one who protected him, the one who looked after him, the one who loved him. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, vice versa, loved him as well. Loved his uncle. So much that he wanted to make dua for him when he died. Yet Allah revealed the verse to say that he could not. Okay? So if he could not guide someone to Islam, why do you think we, having all the arguments and everything, someone like Richard Dawkins will come to Islam? He knows truly that there is a God. Yet for his pride, he'll probably hide it. Similarly, Abu Talib knew, he even said to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that what you're on is the truth, but I want to follow what my forefathers did. Okay? So this is a disease that we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He saves us from. This stubbornness and to stick to something which is not true. So, not all the scientists believe in evolution. So this science myth that atheists come to you, that if you believe in science, you have to believe that evolution is true. This is some examples of some of the scientists who have written books against evolution, okay? And some of these titles, I look at these titles: Evolution, A Theory in Crisis, written by Michael Denton. Another book, Darwin on Trial, by Philip E. Johnson. All non-Muslims, by the way, not Muslims. Non-Muslims are tackling against his books. Darwin retried, okay, and appealed to reason by someone called Norman Macbeth. Shattering the Myths of Darwinism by Richard Milton. And Not by Chance by Dr. Lee Spetner. These are famous scientists, and as we say, thousands of scientists in the world believe that evolution is a myth and does not exist and is a fallacy. So this concept, when atheists come and tell you that if you believe in science, you have to believe there's no God, is completely against Islam and against most scientists. Okay, I'm going to quickly finish because I'm really running out of time. I want to give you some examples of the past, how the scholars of Islam used to discuss with atheists, okay? And one of the famous discussions is Abu Hanifa. And Abu Hanifa, by any standards, is no ordinary man, okay? He is no ordinary man. He is the master of usul. When we talk about in our deen about usul al-fiqh, who is the one who created the basic principle usul is Abu Hanifa. He is the one who memorized hundreds of thousands of hadiths and hukms. You know, today, if I want to look at something, I have to go on the computer and find it out. Abu Hanifa was all in his head. You want to hukum about this, all in his head. This man was so amazing, he is no ordinary man. Yet when he discussed with an atheist, he brings it down to such easy and rational principles. He didn't use some complicated formula of probability and all this. He used a very simple argument to convince an atheist that God exists. And the Khalifa at the time, he invited Abu Hanifa to discuss with this atheist, okay? Because the Khalifa probably didn't know the argument. So Abu Hanifa, he agreed to meet this person at a certain place and says, I'll see you there and we will discuss about this concept of God exists or not. So the day came and the man and the Khalifa, they kept waiting for Abu Hanifa until he finally came. And everyone questioned him about his being late and what happened. So he started explaining how there was a river and he had to cross the river and he was waiting for a boat to come out and bring him on the other side of the river. While he was waiting, the branches and the leaves of the tree fell and slowly formed themselves into a boat. Okay? And he jumped in that boat, crossed the river. Obviously the people laughed at him, saying, you know, are you mad? How can you be waiting for this? And he says, you don't. And then Abu Hanifa says, are you mad enough to believe that a boat was made all by itself? And then Abu Hanifa replies, says, who is more mad? The one who believed that a boat was created by itself, or the one who believes that the entire world is created by itself? Okay? Who is more mad? Subhanallah, that man took the shahada. Okay? Because when you talk to people with reason, and if they are willing to understand with reason and open their hearts, when a reasonable argument will be given to them, they will accept it. So he used a very simple argument to convince an atheist. Another one is called a dialogue with a scholar. I don't know if many of you have heard of this, okay? A young man, he comes to a scholar and he says, I have 3 questions for you. First one, does God exist? If so, what is his shape? Okay? And then he says, what is fate? Taqdeer, okay? And then the last question, if shaitan was created from fire, why at the end will he be thrown into hell, who is also created from fire? It certainly will not hurt him, and since shaitan and the hell were created from fire, did God not think this far? It's basically saying, you know, did God make a mistake? Astaghfirullah. So the scholar, and subhanAllah, please don't do this when you are doing now, okay? Just in case if you're tempted to use this argument. The scholar slapped the young man in his face very hard, okay? And the dialogue goes on, okay? The young man feeling pain, he says, why do you get angry at me? The scholar says, I'm not angry. The slap is my answer to your 3 questions, okay? I really don't understand the man saying. The scholar says, how do you feel after I slapped you? The man says, of course I felt the pain. So do you believe that pain exists? He said, yes. Show me the shape of the pain. I can't. That is my first answer. All of us feel God's existence without being able to see his shape. Do we not see our surroundings? Do we not see the mountains? Do we not see the sun and the moon and the sea and everything? Do we not see all of this and then deny God? How stupid can we be? Okay? The second one, he says, the scholar, last night did you dream that you'd be slapped by me? He said, no. Did you ever think that you'd get a slap from me today? He said, no. That is fate. Fate is something you don't know about. Okay? It will happen. And the last one is, my hand that I used to slap you, what is it created from? The man says, from skin. And your face, what is it created from? He said, skin. Do you feel pain after I slapped you? He said, yes, I'm in pain. So in the same way, shaitan is made out of fire, and hellfire is made out of fire, and if Allah wants, inshallah, the hell will become a very painful place for the shaitan. Okay? So see how the scholars in the past, they use rational arguments, very easy, not complicated, X, Y, Z, very simple form of way of arguing with people who have questions. And this demonstrates that in our history, that we're not shy away from difficult questions. The scholars never shoot, if you look at, on the opposite, in some arguments, when the atheists came and tackled Christianity, most of the Christian scholars at the time, they just believe. Doesn't matter, just believe. That's all they said, just believe, have faith. That's the argument, and that was mainly the answer. Whereas the scholars of Islam, they would always come back with an answer, come back with a rebuttal, argue back with them with an answer that is rational. Okay? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, brothers, we start the second session, which is called agnosticism. Okay, it's a bit of a mouthful of a word. Okay, the brother who's taking the money to Somalia needs to go. So, can we ask a favor from one of the sisters upstairs that if they bring the bucket with the money at the bottom of the stairs near the door, inshallah someone will pick it up from there. So please do that favor for us. So inshallah we're now going to talk about agnosticism, okay? And again we'll start off with a definition. And the founder of agnosticism, which is a word hard to pronounce for me again, is someone called Thomas Henry Huxley, okay? He's the one who originated this term. And you can see it's not that old, 1869. So only at the most few hundred years old. And again, it's as a consequence of Christianity's ability to answer the rational questions. So you see many of these ideas have come about as a result of Christianity's ability to answer rational questions. So remember how we said A means without, or A means no. And the word gnosis means knowledge, okay? So agnostic means without knowledge. And when we talk about agnostic, it means without knowledge specifically about God or gods, okay? So this is the definition of agnostic. Now, if you can see the slide, but it's very hard to read. Someone called Gordon Stein, he wrote an essay meaning the meaning of atheism and agnosticism, okay? And the reason is, you either believe in God or you don't believe God. Okay, that is the two kind of like points of view that you can have. Agnostic is something in between. And they had to redefine kind of like atheism in a certain way, because you couldn't have, how can you have someone who believes in God and doesn't believe God? It's, some of you are probably not old enough, there used to be a program called Spitting Image, and they used to take mick of the politicians, and they used to call the Liberal Democrat neither on the left, neither on the right, somewhere in the middle. And they used to talk about the legs, and on the left leg or the right leg, somewhere in the middle. Okay, so this kind of, they used to take the mick out of the Liberal Democrats, because neither they were this or neither that. And agnostics are very similar. They don't believe in God, neither do they deny God. Okay, because they say you can't, without any doubt, prove that God exists. Neither can you, without any doubt, prove that God doesn't exist. Okay, so this is the belief of agnostics. Now, what they say that the existence of God and the belief in God is not relevant. Okay. So agnostic believes that it doesn't matter if God exists or not. What matters is to be good. Now the reason we're talking about this is these are the arguments that they come up to in the Dawah table, yeah? What matters is to be good. And what matters is to have a good life, to live life to the max, okay? And what they say, we don't need God, okay? God is not needed. Mankind is intelligent enough to decide what is good and what is bad, and to do our own affairs. The agnostic really is a lazy atheist, okay? A lazy atheist. Because the atheist, he confirms that there's no God, okay? But the agnostic says, I can't 100% confirm there's no God, but I can't 100% confirm that there is a God, but I don't really care, okay, if there is a God or not. I want to live my life the way I want to live it. For him, believing in a God is an inconvenience. It gets in the way, okay? It gets in the way of me raving every Friday night. It gets in the way of me partying with my friends. It gets in the way of me drinking alcohol and taking 10 pints down and getting drunk. Because if I believe in God, I'm going to have to follow what He says. So I don't really want to believe in God. So that's the agnostic. Now if you look at many of the people, whether it's Muslims, non-Muslims, in their actions, not in their belief, in their actions they live an agnostic life. Because many Muslims live a life where they don't think about what God said and what Muhammad said. They live a life what benefits them, what gives them benefit. Many Muslims are in the same category. So they don't have agnostic belief, but they have an agnostic way of life. So the question you need to ask an agnostic, okay, is would they have an agnostic approach when they buy a house? What do I mean by that, okay? Let's say I've got £200,000 to buy a house, okay? And I can buy a house in West Bridgeford, or I can buy a house in Forest Fields. Would I just go and buy and spend willy-nilly any house with that £200,000? Would you do that?
No.
You wouldn't. You'd make sure that if you're going to spend £200,000 on a house, that you get value for money. You make sure that it is in the right area. You make sure that you're not going to get robbed or whatever. You're going to make all the research about what kind of areas. You're going to go on all the websites to find out the crime rate in the area. You're going to go on all the websites to find out all the best schools in the area. You're going to do all of this research to buy a house. Okay? Why do you not have that approach? Well, I don't care if it's a good area or not, I'll just go and buy a house. Yeah? Why do you not have that agnostic approach when you go and buy a house? Similarly, if you ask him, when you go buy a car, will you have an agnostic approach? I don't really care if it's a good car or a fast car or a rubbish car, I'm just going to go and buy a car. They won't. They'll make sure they do all the research, find out the MPG, find out the top speed, find out about the service history. All the research when they go and buy a car. Okay? Similarly, when they look for finding a partner in life, they're going to look at, okay, is this person that I'm going to marry a good person, a bad person? They do all the research. So what I'm trying to say is that agnostics, when it comes to things in creation, things in daily life, they want to make sure that they make the right decision. But when it comes to the biggest question in life, is there a creator or not, they don't put any effort. They don't want to exert any effort. They don't want to know. They don't want to make the effort to find out the truth, because they don't think it relates to them. And they say, who's good, okay? This often, the argument by many is that you don't need to believe in God as long as you are good. Well, who defines good or bad? You need to ask an agnostic who defines what good and bad. Many in this society will see nothing wrong with the following things. In this society, boyfriend and girlfriend, is that something bad? No, it's good. Actual fact, kids, if they don't have a girlfriend at the age of 12, something wrong with the boy, he must be gay. Yeah? So this is the society that we live in, okay? Similarly, women not covering their hair is not seen as bad. It's actually seen as beautiful. It's actually seen as someone who's progressive, okay? Similarly, when we buy and we charge interest, get a loan, they charge interest. This is not seen as something bad. It's seen as something okay, acceptable. Similarly, drinking wine, is that seen as bad? No. They actually encourage people to drink wine when they have food. It's seen as a good way of life. A good way of life is you have a glass of wine with your food, okay? So this is seen as good. So in this society, eating pork or meat that's not slaughtered in halal way is not seen as bad. It's seen as okay. Okay? So who defines good? I don't know if many of you know, on the forest today was, I think, the Gay Pride Festival. Okay? The Gay Pride Festival. Okay? Seen as something good. Seen as something to celebrate. They are defining the good. Okay? So whose good is it that we are talking about? If you leave man to decide what is good, remember man is weak, he's limited, he's needy. We need to go to the toilet. If we don't eat, Ramadan is coming, we're going to feel the hunger, we're going to eat. If we don't eat, we get weak. So if you leave man to decide what's good and bad, he'll base it on his desires. What he feels like, what's going to bring benefit to him, what's going to give him benefit, he's going to base his good and bad on these desires, on his own interest and benefit. So who's good? So when you talk about agnostics, that as long as we're good, who defines what's good and bad? You need an arbitrary definer who defines what's good and bad. Believe it to man, man will decide one day something is good, the next day will define it's bad. Then the next day will say it's good again. We'll keep on chopping and changing, chopping and changing. So you need to ask an agnostic, so if you don't believe in God, you're not sure there's God, what is the purpose in your life? Why are you here? Okay? If there's no creator, you're not sure about a thing, what about everything that's been created? Everything must have a purpose. Even the shoe, the socks, the coats, everything has a purpose. Yet our human beings, remember that one, the cell that we talked about, all these complicated things does not have a purpose. It doesn't make sense. It's not rational. Yeah, it's not rational that we exist on this earth without a purpose. Okay? When you buy something, you work out you work out what you need, and then you find something that matches that need. SubhanAllah, Prophet Isa went to buy a car today. Yeah? He knew what he needed. Allahu Akbar. Yeah? So he knew what he needed. He knew what he wanted the car for. And then he went to buy the car so that it can fulfill the purpose. So in our lives, we need to know what is the purpose of our life. We apply this reason to everything. But why don't these agnostics and these atheists apply this to the most important question, the purpose of life? Okay? And this leads on to the three most fundamental questions that when you discuss with an atheist or an agnostic, you must bring these questions up to discussion because they need to have answers for these questions. The first one is, where did we come from? Where did we come from? Did we come from apes, monkeys, like we discussed earlier on about the atheist belief? What are we doing here? What is our purpose? What is the purpose of this life? Okay? And what will happen to us when we die? These are the three fundamental questions that all human beings in their lifetime, when they're sleeping late at night or sometime in their life, they will ask themselves. Whether you're an agnostic, whether you're an atheist or Christian or Muslim, all human beings will ask these three questions. So we need to have the answers to these three questions. And not only that, we must link the answer to these three questions. Because the fault of Christianity and Judaism is they answer the three questions but they don't link them. Okay? So they agree that there was God. They agree that in this life we worship God. Okay? And they agree that after life there's hell and heaven. But they don't link the three together. They don't link the consequences of what you do in this life has an effect in the next life. And it's because they don't link this, that's why many people can't understand these questions. So, the proof of existence of God, this is what we need to do with agnostics. We need to convince them that you need to believe in God, okay? You need to not be lazy, okay? We need to have this idea and prove to them that God exists by the arguments that we use against the atheists, okay? And as like all these other things like gravity, and I mentioned, absolute zero, black holes, mental telepathy, all these things that we can't see, yeah? But they exist, yeah? Even though we can't see them, they all exist. So the agnostic, really, unfortunately many people, their actions are agnostic, but their belief isn't agnostic. Whereas a very few minority people, they have this concept that we live in this life, believe in God, it doesn't matter. Don't believe in God, doesn't matter. Just do what you like. You have to break that down. You have to break what's the purpose in your life. Who defines what's right and wrong? When you break it down, then you have to point to the fact that there is a creator. Okay? And then you go to the arguments of fact, how do you prove there is a creator or not? So all of these ideas, we see that they are new ideas. Atheism and agnosticism, they're new ideas as a result of when man went away from religion because of the battle in Europe between the church and the state. And these are a consequence of that. And inshallah, as Islam is coming, these kind of ideas and these kind of beliefs will be quashed and basically smashed out of the pieces. Because you see that when you discuss with these people, they don't have answers to the questions. They don't, when you ask them, like, when you go and buy a house, you don't just go and buy one. They'll say, no, I'll make sure I make all the research. But why don't you do the same research about life? Why don't you do the same research about what you're here for? What's your main purpose? How can you be just living life without not knowing the reason? So it doesn't make sense. So again, going back to the rational arguments, when we discuss with atheists and agnostic, we need to bring it down to a rational level, bring it to our reality around us, and give them examples that they can relate to. And inshallah, hopefully if they're sincere, they will open up and they will look further on. Jazakallah.